Welcome back to Book Club. Well, today we are finishing up A Confederacy of Dunces, and we'll be moving on to our next book. But before we do that, I went out shopping for Christmas cards this year, and I have found my card. Let's see if you can see this. Okay, 2020, underneath, 1 star out of 5, and underneath that, I'd like a refund. I've decided that just about sums up my feelings for 2020, and I may go back and get some more of those. Okay, when we come back, we are going to look at tying up A Confederacy of Dunces in a nice little bow and get ready to move on to the next one. So when we pick back up with Ignatius, the crusade for Moorish dignity, which is what he has called his efforts to organize the African-American population at Levy Pants, has been a complete failure. Ignatius has been fired. He's become a hot dog vendor. In part, this is accidental, but given his fondness for junk food, it was almost inevitable. So, while he is vending his dogs, he reconnects with Dorian Green. And Dorian Green was the very flamboyant, gay, used clothing reseller. So, he's the one who bought Ignatius's mother's hat. And Dorian has decided that Ignatius is a delightful novel character, and he's going to put a party together. Ignatius decides this party is going to be his attempt to organize yet another disenfranchised minority group, gays. And he's gung-ho for this. Meanwhile, Ignatius has come across a picture of Lana Lee. Now, she's the owner of the Night of Joy, that sleazy strip bar. It's a pornographic picture of Lana Lee as an intellectual with a globe and a book and a piece of chalk, and she's doing naughty things with the piece of chalk. The book, however, although Ignatius does not know this, is his own copy of Boethius's Consolation of Philosophy, which he has lent to Officer Mancuso, and Darlene's lackey, George, the high school dropout, has stolen the book from Mancuso, given it to Lana, and hence the picture. Ignatius confabulates this wild story in his head, all about how this young woman is an unfortunate but brilliant scholar who is forced to make blue pictures, and, and he must meet her. All he has to do is just be in her presence, and he will connect with her, because clearly they are kindred spirits, and she is a fan of Boethius. Dorian, meanwhile, organizes a party which is going to be the social event of the season in New Orleans. Ignatius shows up to the party. In Ignatius's mind, he is going to be organizing some sort of political coup with his new army of gay people. And we'll touch back on that in a minute. The party doesn't go well. Ignatius ends up scurrying off to the Night of Joy in order to connect with his soulmate, this brilliant female philosopher who has Boethius's Consolation of Philosophy. Doesn't go well. He ends up in the streets. His picture is in the paper. He goes to the hospital with a wonk in the head. and his mother is at the end of her tether. At this point, a previous thread comes back in, and that is in the person of Gus Levy, owner of Levy Pants, who is now experiencing the fallout from that bizarre letter that Ignatius wrote to Abelman, who was a seller of Levy Pants. Abelman, of course, is going to sue Gus Levy. Gus figures out that Ignatius has written the letter. Ignatius, in fact, tells him it was Miss Trixie, who is clearly, we are talking deep in Alzheimer's. And even though Gus eventually figures out that Ignatius was behind the letter, it's Miss Trixie's going to take the fall for it because it's in everybody's best interests. And she's willing to. If Gloria said she wrote the letter, then she must have written the letter. And at this point, Mrs. Riley's had all she can take. She's going to have Ignatius committed. And the only person that Ignatius can rely on in his time of need, the evil minx, Myrna Minkov, slides into the picture like a knight in shining armor in her little tiny Renault and shoves Ignatius in the back seat, and they make good their escape. It's just a wild farce. And I hope you enjoyed it, because I find it very, very funny. And it's one of those books that I've read many times because it always gives me a laugh. My favorite portion of the book, and believe me, there's a lot to choose from, is at the beginning of chapter 11. Ignatius goes off on this bizarre rant about how it's about time that homosexuals are involved in politics and all of the wonderful benefits that will accrue to mankind if the government is full of cross-dressing drama queens. He was incorrect, though, when he spoke about not having, although we probably did not, in fact, at the time, have any open transvestites in the House or Senate. We certainly have had politicians who were cross-dressers. And that's my digression for the moment. I said we would come back to that. This is a little bit of trivia. I find it to be really fun trivia. In colonial America, 1702, the colonial governor of New York and New Jersey, who was in fact in charge of military operations in the colonies from Virginia to the north. So this was like pretty much half of the colonies at that time, and certainly the most affluent portion and the most densely populated portion of the colonies was a guy named Edward Hyde. What do you care about Edward Hyde, right? Okay, well, he was also known as Lord Cornbury. He was the third Earl of Clarendon, very politically connected, which is how he got to be governor of New York and New Jersey. And apparently in 1702, he showed up for the opening of the New York legislature in a large ball gown with a brilliant hair topping, elaborate headdress, and a fan, and just sauntered in there in full drag. Now, it's interesting because historians have, in recent times, questioned this. Is like, well, if that really happened, wouldn't people have spoken about it? Well, they did. And there are letters at the time. In fact, I know of 3 letters, could be more, from prominent politicos of that era who said things like, well, wrote, more to the point, wrote contemporaneously. And the governor gets up on the parapets in ball gowns and waving to the people just for everyone to see. The governor was down in the marketplace, all dressed up with a beautiful hoop skirt and a lovely fan, waving to the populace and for the whole world to see, and I thought it was dreadful. And it's unusual to me that people are now challenging that, saying, well, those were his political enemies. Well, wouldn't there have been more censure if it in fact happened? No, no. Very well connected politically. Extremely unlikely that anybody was going to do it. What were they going to do? He was the guy in charge. And it was commented on at the time. So even though there are people who dispute it, I have to say I believe the evidence is strongly in favor of the idea that Edward Hyde did, in fact, wander around dressed up in full 18th century women's dress, which was, the dress alone would have been something to see, but Edward Hyde wandering around in it would have been something else. So I have a couple of pictures. One is from the New York State Archives. Another is from a museum in Dallas. Both are purported to be Edward Hyde. I'm going to show you the pictures, by the way. You judge for yourself. To my way of thinking, I look at those pictures and I see the same person, male or female. If she was female, well, that was unfortunate. If she was male, it was more understandable. And it has long been alleged that both these portraits were of Hyde. So let's take a look at the pictures. Yeah, well, looks like that was the governor of New York and New Jersey, who was, in fact, a very able military commander who kept the colonies safe in the Second French and Indian War. But there nowhere is it carved in stone that just because you are a transvestite, you have to be a lousy military leader. Oh, and I should also mention that another, what I consider to be very specious argument in favor of the rumors about Hyde being untrue is that there's no evidence that he was homosexual. You do not have to be gay to be a transvestite. There were other people who said, well, he was transgender. There's no evidence one way or another to suggest that or to deny it. I think transgender is probably really not a feature of what was going on. It seems very likely that he was a good, although corrupt governor. Apparently there was a lot of corruption in his administration, a very able military leader, and his fashion sense was nothing short of stunning. So, Edward Hyde, thank you very much. Do we have people openly walking around in drag in politics? Yeah, sure. There you go. Anyway, that is my digression. I just thought we could have a little bit of fun with that. Let me know what you thought of A Confederacy of Dunces. Now, next on our list of books is this. This is another light, funny piece. There was a mini-series made about this for television. I think the BBC produced it, I'm not sure. Very good, worth watching if you can. The book is funny. And as always, I'm going to put a link to a free PDF copy. I don't want you to have to spend any money on this. Now, one of the things I want you to think about, because I threw this out last time, is I'm looking for your suggestions about books. I did get a number of suggestions from one of our readers. She threw out 4 books, good books. But here's the caveat. Whatever we get into cannot be something that's likely to be triggering for people who are having issues with isolation and depression. And her book list, though wonderful, 3 of the books were about dark themes. And we just can't go there, not right now, because one of the reasons we're doing book club is to keep people connected in a positive and upbeat way. So I know, and we're thinking, well, we're going to have to dispense with all great literature because very nearly all of it included some pretty dark themes. Well, maybe. If we can find some really good literature with really upbeat, uplifting, funny themes, great. Because we just can't let book club become something that is a drain on the emotions of people who are already suffering from depression, isolation, whatever. Because, that's our reality. 2020 has not been a great year. So still, I would love to hear your suggestions. There was one book on the list that viewer had suggested that I think might be a good candidate. I'm going to check into that over the next couple of weeks. And I would, again, totally love to hear your suggestions. And I should mention, one of the reasons that I have not thrown some of my new favorites, which are the Robert Galbraith series, Cormoran's Strike, that was written by J.K. Rowling, so very well written. And frankly, she is as good at writing detective fiction as she is at writing, about her wizarding world. Those have dark themes too. So they are off the table, at least for the time being. Things pick up. We are going to be able to expand out of this sort of small bubble of entertaining, but, escapist. We don't want to be too grounded in reality right now, because reality right now is not all that great. All right. So once again, love to hear your suggestions. Meantime, we are going to hit up Good Omens. Neil Gaiman tends to write about religious themes. Well, I shouldn't say tends to write. It's an area in which he has some experience. Let me put it that way, because not all of his writing is religious. Terry Pratchett, who is no longer with us, he passed away a while ago, tends to write fantasy and a parallel universe works, mostly geared at a younger audience. This is not a book that is geared for a younger audience. There are children playing some key roles in this, but it's not what I would call a children's book or a young adult book. It's just a funny, sarcastic, good read, definitely good read, with a surface plot that is engaging and funny and whatever, and opens up a lot of questions about the nature of religion and faith. So it's one of those books that you can get as much or as little as you want out of it. If you don't want to explore the deep things, enjoy the comedy. If you like to look a little deeper, there's stuff that you can chew on there. Okay, so let me know what you thought of A Confederacy of Dunces, and let's get started on Good Omens. There will be a link. What I will do is I will put it in the comments. I will pin that comment. So when this video comes up, it'll be right there. You'll be able to download it and have it as a PDF. Meantime, I acquired this. The books that I personally read are all audiobooks. I don't do well with print anymore. I'm thinking I probably got this for under $15 on Amazon, and that includes shipping. hardbound. Nice book. And I will, in fact, go look through my Amazon account and see right down to the penny what I did pay for it. It wasn't very much. So if you want it, I'm sure the paperback is a lot less expensive. Okay. In the meantime, have a great week. I will see you all tomorrow, Friday. We've got a shopping video. So enjoy and have a great day.